Can you just mute his one? Because I'll leave it on.
Okay.
I'd like to welcome you here to our Lenten retreat today and tomorrow. And just to give you the timetable for today, Father James will speak from 10 to 11, and then he has some reflections for you to go away and spend some time with. So that will be from 11 to 11:30. We're back in the church at 11:30. He will give the second talk up until 12:30, and then there's lunch, and we finish after you finish eating. So it's with real pleasure that I introduce to you and welcome Father James Lyons. He's a priest of the Archdiocese of Wellington. He was ordained in 1967, and that makes him 55 years a priest of the church and a priest of God. Father James is a master craftsman with words. Words are his bread and butter, and you will see that he is indeed an artist when he puts these words together, paints pictures and images, and helps us to come to understand the gospel in a new way. So Father James, it's great to have you with us. Welcome. I give it to you.
Thank you. I don't know where to begin after that introduction, Monsignor. Thank you.
Well, over here.
Over here? Thank you.
So we can get you on the camera.
And my apologies for being 2 minutes late, because I know how you like to keep everything on time.
Indeed.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the invitation. And am I not too loud? Is that all right? Okay. I was in the supermarket just a few weeks ago, and people there, and masks and everything. Excuse me for not wearing a mask, but I find it's easier, feel more human this way. So, but there was a little boy tugging at his mum and says, "Mum, I'm hungry." And the mother said, "We'll be home soon, I'll get you something." I said, "But I'm hungry now," he said. "I'm hungry now." And so I hope you're hungry now for a renewal. You'll see the word partnership up there, and that's really the theme that I hope will kind of run through all the sessions that I give. But this particular one is on partnership, and we'll be looking at Lent and Advent. When you first hear Lent, you think tough time, and you see Advent and you think looking forward to Christmas. And you might wonder if they are connected, but they're very much connected. And that's what I want to unfold for you a little bit today. But the other, when I was, I'm now retired and I help out, but I've spent my life in parishes and in communications work. I always went into schools, and the schools are very important. Schools have become the parishes today, because that's where you find most of the Catholics in our schools, You don't find them in the church. So schools are very important for evangelizing. So I would go into the classroom and I always try and have a little joke for the children. And even though I've been away from the parish now, I was in the cathedral parish for 11 years, and I've been away, I've been retired now for three years. But I still go back to help out. The cathedral down there, if you don't know, is closed for strengthening and so on. But I go down during the week and help with one of the midday masses in the cathedral hall. So I go across the playground, and this little boy came up to me just 2 weeks ago, and he said, Father James, I've got a joke for you." So they remembered. And I said, "Great, what is it?" He said, "Well, you've got to listen carefully." He said, "Now, did you know that February can't march, but April may?" So I thought, I wish I'd thought of that one. It was really good, really good. Okay. We're going to begin with a grace. I now live out at the Home of Compassion in Island Bay with the Sisters of Compassion out there, and I'm kind of a chaplain there, but I help out elsewhere. But a few years ago, I put together a book of graces for meals, but being out at the Home of Compassion, where everything is centered around Suzanne Aubert and her beautiful expressions, beautiful sayings. So with one of the sisters, we've put together a new little book of graces, using a lot of Suzanne Aubert's quotes. And because you're all hungry, and we're kind of beginning a meal, thought it would be good to have a grace. And this book, if you just open it up at random, you often get just the right thing. And when I opened this up this morning, I thought, yeah, this is for us. So to begin with the quote from John's Gospel, "I am the vine, and you are the branches." There's so much going on in everyone's life. Making a date for dinner, Lord, can be a nightmare. Now that we've managed to meet, help us to remember that we are important to one another and that life is about togetherness. Keep us close, united in your peace. Amen. Doesn't mention bacon and eggs or anything, but it mentions togetherness, coming together. And that's what we're about when we talk of partnership. I had a little title for this, tidal waves and tsunamis. And thinking that kind of describes us today in our very turbulent world. It's like we're being overwhelmed with the stuff that's going on. One of the downsides of social media is that things are in front of us instantaneously, and they contribute to us feeling so helpless because we can't do anything. We can't help stop the war in Ukraine. You know, we're so far away. We don't know what to do, but it's there right in front of us, and we see it instantaneously, live screen. So we feel overwhelmed. Then COVID comes along, and for 2 years or more, we haven't been able to live as we've normally lived. It's been tough. So the sense of overwhelming. So what do you think is going to happen to us? That's a question that's on people's minds. What's going to happen to us? We're in a bind. We can't seem to get out of it. One thing happens after another. Well, I think the first thing in coming to terms with that is to realize that we are not our own makers. Our faith tells us that we come from God. That the God that we worship is the God of all creation. So that first thing is that we are partners with God. Our faith journey begins with the Hebrew book of Genesis, where God creates the world and gives it to us. And we are called to be partners with God in the work of building up creation. God does all the groundwork, puts everything in place, and then says to you and I, look after it. Take care of it. So living out this twofold partnership carries the promise of harmony and fulfillment in our lives. So to harmonize and to fulfill, that's our task. How do you harmonize? Well, you bring a lot of different things together so they make a complete whole, and they sound terrific when it's all together. And fulfilling is putting the icing on the cake that God has given us. With God, we complete creation. Today we're concerned with climate change. That's the other enormous thing that's overwhelming. We're being told that, living here on the top of this hill, you'd probably be okay. But another explosion or two, and that lake could either disappear or just burst up. We see pictures of the ice caps in Antarctica. Interesting statistic the other day you might have picked up that normally they're talking about a heat wave in Antarctica. That normally the heavy ice lives and breathes at 50 degrees below freezing. But it's now only 15 degrees below freezing. So 35 degrees have disappeared. So and the ice caps are kind of melting. So that's another overwhelming thing. But it's as though the earth itself has had to take charge to get things back in balance, because we're there to help and to care for creation, but we're doing the opposite. We're not helping. And one of the theorists about the COVID thing, this is nature saying, I got to set things right. I've got to slow everybody down. I've got to take away their ability to scar this creation. If we have partnership with God, we can only do that by being in partnership with each other. And we are all individuals, but our call is to be together. Now, I was interested in hearing the response that we had at the Mass this morning. The Lord will guard us like a shepherd guarding his flock. And you remember the story that Jesus tells of the Good Shepherd? And how important it was to bring that lost shepherd back to the flock. That lost shepherd was necessary for the flock to be together, to be one, to be whole. So we can't really live as individuals, even though we are individually made. We can only really live and be fulfilled in connection with one another. So partnership with God implies partnership with each other and partnership with the earth, which is part of creation. So everything comes together, everything meshes together in partnership. Right now, the earth is in charge. And that's not just a statement to shock, it's a statement of fact. And the earth is taking control until we wake up ourselves enough to do what we are called to do, what we were created to do. Now, you might be thinking, what's that got to do with faith? What's that got to do with my religion? It's got everything to do with it. Because we cannot be true to God if we are not true to His call. And God's call is to take care of everything that He's made. Take care of each other, take care of ourselves, and to take care of this earth. So, Advent and Lent. Well, perhaps first of all, Pope Francis, almost forgot him, but most important, connecting us. He says, God always forgives. How consoling that is. God always forgives. Remember Peter saying to John, how many times shall I forgive? 7 times? Because 7 was a great number for the Jewish people. It was the number of perfection. And remember what Jesus says? No, not 7. 77 times. Keep on forgiving. Never stop forgiving. Easy to say, difficult to do. God always forgives. Humans forgive a good part of the time. Good part of the time. But think of your own relationship with people at the moment. Whether in your own family or people that you know, there'll be some bit of resentment going on in you over something that's happened. Or someone who said something. See, we tend, and I put myself in there too, we tend to hold back. I'll forgive if they forgive, or if they apologize, I'll forgive. That sort of thing. So, humans forgive a good part of the time. Nature never forgives. Nature never forgives. Now, that in itself is a powerful meditation. God, you and I, and nature. Partnership. The three need to come together. And because nature is nature, requires our care. It's like the little babies. Little babies don't forgive you. They don't. They'll shout and scream and make sure they're fed. Because their intelligence hasn't developed, so they don't know anything about forgiving or even hurting. They're just babies. And they're close to nature. So we look after our babies, we bring them up, and they come to understand who they are and what they're there for. To care for each other, to care for creation. So, Advent and Lent. They're both times of waiting. Lent, we're waiting for Easter. Advent, we're waiting for Christmas. It's just not a sitting around time waiting for something to happen. They're both very active seasons. They're meant to be active. They're energized. They're times of preparation. Now we're approaching the end of our Lent. What's it been like for you? I think most of us start off with Lent saying, yeah, I'm going to do this and that, and I won't do that. And then suddenly it's the 5th week of Lent, and you say, oh, hang on. Well, I started doing what I was going to do, but I let things slip a bit. So it's meant to be a time of preparation. And a good way of understanding that is to look at the way Jesus uses the image of the seed. Remember, he says that the person went out and scattered the seed. And some fell over there, and some fell over, some fell here. And it just shows that generosity of the seed, throwing it all out. This is the way God works with you and I. Just gives us everything. And what we do with it is important. So the other image that Jesus used is a seed that's buried in the ground. And what happens to this seed? A lone seed, buried in the darkness, covered over, stamped on, watered. But it's not just lying there. That seed is hugely active. And its energy is changing it from within. And he's telling us that you and I are seeds. So think of this. How do you change? You change from within. You don't change from the outside. You might get sunburned, you might get wet, but real change happens within. This change for the seed is driving it to the surface. It's reaching for the light. And that light will complete its journey to birth. So many elements combine to transform the seed into whatever it was designed to be. So you'll get the soil, you'll get the moisture, you get the dark, the wind, the rain, the sun. The combined effort is essential for the seed's growth and development. My home is in the Hawke's Bay, and I still have family up there. And there's great concern at the moment that this year's apple crop will be the worst ever because of the too much rain. All of a sudden, Napier Hastings area, which is renowned and prides itself on its warmth, has been under threat. And then further north towards Gisborne, we've had the horrendous flooding. So unless all those things combine, the moisture, the rain, the wind, the sun, unless there's a combination, you're not going to get the real growth. So there's a partnership going on within nature to give us the fruit at the appointed time. Many things can conspire to ruin a crop or prevent a life from maturing or reaching its potential. And it's exactly the same with you and I. Many things can happen to stop our proper growth. There was a documentary recently just called Seed, S-E-E-D. And then it had the subtitle, The Untold Story. And it was how the seeds are disappearing. The seeds of many plants are disappearing. And it's part of this climate change. And some of those plants are quite essential. But on the other side, showing again partnership, how seeds, how plants, so many plants in our world have creatively or inventively made sure that their seeds get distributed. So you have birds who pluck the seeds and then they excrete them and they drop them all over the place, and so more seeds happen. The plants themselves can't move around to drop the seeds, so they have birds and other creatures to do it for them. Or the wind comes along and takes the seeds. So all of this, I hope, is just kind of giving you some insight into what partnership is all about. And you can apply it, say, to a parish, this parish, and think of the partnership that we've had this morning. We've had the Mass here, we've had the morning tea. But neither the Mass nor the morning tea just happened. It took people to bring that together. And the Mass itself would not have been the same without people here, without you here. And Jesus' words are very important. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I'm there with them. So without the gathering, an absence of Jesus, or his presence is more guaranteed by our togetherness. So in a parish, you should be doing all that you possibly can to bring people together, to make them feel welcome, to help them identify with this place as a spiritual home. One of the tragedies of COVID is that we've had to have churches closed. We had to have Mass online, and it's not the same, is it? The Ash on Ash Wednesday, and even that was strange this year. You know, we weren't supposed to have ashes marked. We were supposed to have the ashes sort of scattered like pepper and salt, a bit of ash. But the Ash on Ash Wednesday, it brings us quite literally down to earth, down to where the ashes are. It's the point where we all began, from the earth. Ashes to ash, dust to dust. That's where we began, on the earth. And it gives us a sharp reminder that nothing we have is actually our own. Nothing we have is actually our own. Everything is gift. So Lent is a chance to appreciate life anew and to grow in our respect for one another. Life, I just had a little quote here. It's from Edith Eger, E-G-E-R. She's a clinical psychologist, but she was a Holocaust survivor. And she wrote a beautiful book called Choice. And she says, why is it such a challenge to bring life to life? Why is it such a challenge to bring life to life? to give your life more life, or to bring life to life. Why is it such a challenge? And she says, we cannot choose to have a life free of hurt. And that is the biggest challenge for us today, because our society, our Western society in particular, tells us we shouldn't have any hurt at all. Everything should be free and bright and good, and if you buy this, it'll make your skin never wrinkle, and if you buy this, you'll have friends forever. You know, everything will be smooth. But the reality is, we cannot choose to have a life without hurt, without an absence of hurt. So it's how you use that hurt. And she has a lovely piece here. She says, freedom is about choice. Choosing compassion, choosing humour, choosing optimism, choosing intuition, choosing curiosity, choosing self-expression. Expression, she says, is the opposite of depression. And depression is the negatives. So, if you want to be truly free, then your life has to be filled with compassion, with intuition, with humour, with all those things. Curiosity. What's that for? Where did that come from? Curiosity keeps you going. We say curiosity killed the cat, but curiosity is a very powerful and positive gift. It's how we learn. Just coming back to Advent and everything being a gift. If you've done shopping for birthdays and Christmas and so on, anniversaries, I'm not supposed to move out of here, sorry. But if you choose, you go and buy a present for someone, you take it along, happy birthday, happy anniversary, oh, it's lovely. It's wrapped up in a box. And you often see it at like wedding receptions. People take along presents and they're all put on a table. You see all these gift-wrapped presents. And you go away, you think, oh, I hope they really like that. And if you go and visit them and you'd given them a picture, you'd like to see it on the wall. Or you give them a book, you like to see it somewhere. You like to see. Give them something to wear, you'd like to see them wearing it. And that's the same with God. I've given you a beautiful gift, God says. I've given you. And you haven't even unwrapped yourself. You haven't reached the potential that I know you can reach. What have you done with the gift I've given you? We know how disappointed we are when someone we love and we've given them a gift and you never see it and they never mention it. Didn't they like it? Did they give it to someone else? Did they break it and they're too embarrassed to tell me? Did they already have one? All of those things come into our minds. And it's the same with God. Didn't she like it? Didn't he want it? Has he even looked at it? What about the home I've given you? the earth and the universe that supports your life. Don't you like that either? The way you're treating it suggests you don't. Shifting to Advent, well, what have I got on here? Yeah. These are both challenging seasons, and I've mentioned that with Lent. So coming to Advent, well, I should say, just to remind ourselves that the challenge in Lent begins with the most challenging thing. Jesus is tempted, the temptations of Jesus, temptations to think only of himself. Only of himself. And that's the big temptation for us. It's what prevents real partnership. That selfish part of ourselves becoming the dominant part of ourselves. Being selfish is quite necessary, it's important. But if it dominates your life, it doesn't allow partnership. Advent begins with a challenging. Did anyone tell me what's the challenging beginning of Advent? You'll know it as soon as I mention it. The end of the world. Advent begins with the last things. It doesn't begin with, hey, Jesus is coming, it's going to be a great Christmas. No, it doesn't. It starts with the end of things. That's the challenge. And I used to think that was quite odd, even as a younger priest. Why have we got this? But I've come to understand it, that those challenging words, the end of all things, is the advent, the beginning of our understanding of why Jesus came. Why Jesus came to let us know that what we have is finite. It will end. The lives that we now live, for you and I, each of us will die. It will end. But Jesus came to tell us that when you truly love, love never ends. Death cannot destroy love. So, the challenging part of the Advent season, we will return to God. So be ready. We will return to God. The time to use your gift is now. Now. So our Jewish Christian tradition shares many insights to help us make the most of these seasons of preparation and renewal. So they're challenging seasons and they're renewing seasons. Seasons when we can kind of begin again, take another look at ourselves. What am I missing out on? What haven't I discovered about myself that's part of the gift that God gave me? How can I better use the gift that is me? We are of the earth, and we damage, abuse, or exploit the earth or ourselves at our own peril. So if I'm too wrapped up in myself, that's not going to do me much good. If I'm so wrapped up in other people that I forget myself, that's not going to help me. Constantly balancing things, and Lent and Advent are the two great seasons for balancing. That tradition tells us that we've been given a wonderful destiny by our God, who is love. That's how John defines God is love. And God is in love with us. God, remember the words at the opening of the book of Genesis, at the end of creation? God looked at everything, and what did God say? That's great. That's great. I've made something of great beauty. I love it so much. God is love, and God is in love with us and calls us partners. And that this destiny is reached not as individuals. That's what the Second Vatican Council is one of its great statements. We are not saved as individuals. We are saved as a people. And we heard that in the reading today. I will be your God, and you will be my people. That's why it was necessary to bring the wandering sheep back to the flock, because the sheep had left the people. There was an absence. I will be your God. You will be my people. So it's not a matter of each person struggling and scheming for their own slice of paradise, which is what happens so easily, but we work together. And a parish is a great gift in itself, because I don't suppose, I didn't ask you, but I don't suppose all of you here today know each other terribly well. Would that be right? Yeah. But you're here. And you're here for the same purpose. So there is a wonderful togetherness, even though you're not that familiar with each other. So I might be as much a stranger to you as you are to some of the people here. But that's not a bad thing. It's a great potential in a parish that you don't have to go and look for somewhere else. So that common gift of our faith, don't underestimate it for helping yourself to reach your potential. So our faith, like our God, is communitarian. What have I got on here? These are healing seasons. Our faith being communitarian, we travel our journey as part of a caravan. And not just one little caravan sitting on the back of a car, but a caravan in the sense of a whole line of stuff. We're in a caravan. And as such, you think of one that comes to my mind always is the old circus caravans. All these little wagons and little buses and things going from town to town with the circus. And when I was a little lad and they'd come to our town, it was great excitement, and you'd be down on the street to see this little procession of things going by. Lots of colour, and so different. Each little van or bus or something was painted differently, had different stuff going on in it, and it was kind of a rugged and a mixed up bunch. And that's what we are. All of us here today, we're not all the same. Great differences between us. But we are the church, the people of God. We can be stubborn, we can be rebellious, but together. We might pull in different directions, get exhausted and disillusioned, and even drop out for a while. But we cannot leave the caravan. No more than we can separate ourselves from the earth or live without the sustaining influence of the earth. Cannot live without it. So we have to learn to live with it. We cannot live without each other. I have people sometimes ask me, how many weddings did you do as a priest? And I've really got no idea. I had an idealistic sense when I was first ordained that I was going to send an anniversary card to every couple that I married. And I don't think I sent one. But I have been overjoyed to be at the golden wedding of several couples that I married since I retired. And I remember one of them last year saying, the friends were having them on a bit and saying, "We never thought you'd last." This couple never thought you'd last. And I think one of them said, "Well, we just had to learn to live together. We had to learn not to live. We thought we were, deeply in love, and we probably were, but we had to learn to live together." And that's a real insight, because we have to keep learning to live together as a family, as a parish, and as a world, as a nation. We've been shocked a little bit over the protests regarding the vaccination, and living in Wellington, it wasn't a nice place to be for a couple of weeks. No one knew exactly what was happening, and the city kind of came to a standstill. People didn't want to go into the city because they didn't want to be abused or have stuff thrown at them, or it was just awful. But we have to learn to live together. Keep learning, never stops. So healing is an important part of the seasons we find ourselves in at the moment with Lent, and then later with Advent. So you might remember this when the Advent season comes along. I just have to check my time because I can get a bit... excuse me, everybody. Oh, okay. Not doing too bad. Are you comfortable there? All right? Thank you. Well, Advent leads to Christmas, as we know, and the birth of what every person longs for. What do we long for? Peace, harmony, a sense of fulfillment. What I said at the beginning. Harmony and fulfillment. Harmonize, fulfill. That's what we all long for. Christmas, in turn, leads us towards Lent. And the realization that peace, harmony, and fulfillment are costly items. They don't come cheap. Lent and Advent are made out of love, because they themselves are gifts. But of course, love brings huge demands on the self. Love puts huge demands on me. Do you know, just to throw a question out, what does God do? What does God do? Anyone like to hazard a guess? Sorry? God is. That's a good answer. Thank you. God is. So God does nothing? Watches over us? Within our scriptures, within the Bible, what does God do? Yes, thank you. I'm showing my own ignorance here, because I was asked this question a few years ago in a seminar. I mean, we, the audience, were asked, and nobody said the things that you're saying. We all sat there and didn't know what to answer. But the person who was leading it said, God brings people out of Egypt. That's what God does. Now, it hit me when I read Pope Benedict's book or encyclical later on love. the look of love. And in it he defines, he's got some beautiful definitions of love. And one is, love is an ongoing exodus. Remember what the exodus was? So Moses, with God, is bringing people out of Egypt. He says love is an ongoing exodus. It's a constant to and fro of people. Now, when you look at the Exodus story, what happened when they got out of Egypt? They hadn't gone very far. They got through the Red Sea. And what happens? They grumble. What are they grumbling about? They grumbled about a number of things. First of all, I think they ran out of food. Where are we going to get food? Why? What did you bring us out of Egypt for? They said to Moses. We had all the food we wanted out there. So God provides the food. Then they go on a bit further and they run out of water. What did you bring us? We want to go back there. See, this is how our loving works. We and I have used this since with couples preparing for marriage, and say when if you think about your love for each other, what was the first attraction that drew you to your partner? And when we talk about it, they realize that I'm attracted to you because I think you'll be great to be with. You'll be great for me. You'll be great for me. I could be fulfilled with you. But as your love develops, you find yourself saying, I want to give myself to you. I want to be with you, not so much for what you'll be for me, but from what I can do for you. Your love kind of shifts, the focus shifts from a selfishness, this person will be good for me, to a going out to the other. I want to give myself to them. But as the love journey goes on, there will be times when you would prefer to be selfish. Go back to Egypt. I remember shocking some people in a homily once because I was talking about priesthood, and I said, I have to tell you that there are times when I wished I was married. And there was this sort of a shock moment, and people were probably thinking, what's coming next? So there are times when I wish, but I know there are times when most married people wish they weren't. And that's the reality, isn't it? You have this pulling and throwing. So what does God do? God brings us out of Egypt. He's constantly, making a pathway through the Red Sea for us. And we find ourselves dropping back. So, in light of that, you look at these seasons, they become seasons of opportunity. When we've grasped both the importance of one another and the importance of our world, and especially our responsibility for one another and our world, so the importance and responsibility, then we will discover room for others, how easy compassion can be, the happiness of sharing, the wonder of forgiveness, and the lightness of love. Those 5 things. We get room for others, compassion can come easy, the happiness of sharing, the wonder of forgiveness, and the lightness of love. Lent reminds us that Jesus' first temptation was to put himself first, or the three temptations, to put himself first. Advent reminds us that Mary and Joseph's journey to Christmas was also plagued with doubt, and for Joseph, the temptation to abandon Mary. Lent begins with ash and the image of nothingness, and also the image of potential. Even ash has some goodness in it. We use it on the gardens. Lent ends with Easter and the image of life restored. Advent opens with life being called home and the image of accountability. Advent ends with the gift of undying hope. So that's the two of them, Lent and Advent, the great balancing acts in our faith. Both seasons offer chances to learn and to grow. They tell us what every one of us yearns to believe, that there is no such thing as a solo journey. We're in this together. Neither in life nor in death is there any need to be afraid. That's my little presentation to you. I have a handout here which I'd just invite you to take away, and where is it? Now you're not. That's the one. There'll be no examination after this, so it's entirely for you, and it's not the sort of thing you probably want to do all at once. It's just there's some questions there that kind of ask you about your own connection with other people and going back over some of the things we've talked about. And there's a lovely little piece of poem there that I put in from a person called Joseph Mary Plunkett. But I'd just like to finish with a little quote from St. John Chrysostom, an old ancient saint. But I love this quote. He says, Prayer lifts the soul into heaven, where it hugs God in an indescribable embrace. Prayer lifts the soul to heaven, where it hugs God in an indescribable embrace. It's a very earthy, powerful, beautiful image. So thank you for being so attentive, and if you want to come back, we're on again at 11.
At 11:30.
11:30, yes. Thank you.
Is it true that you baptized St. John Chrysostom?
Probably. I've done so many.
So we've got half an hour for reflection, back in the church at 11:30. Did everyone get a sheet? Everyone's got a sheet?
You have one each. Have one each? Yeah.
Everyone?
YouTube.
Oh, dear.
Can I turn off your machine?
All the ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. All the ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. Oh, sing to the Lord a new song, for he has done marvelous deeds. His right hand and his holy arm have won the victory. All the ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. The ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. Let all the earth acclaim the Lord, break into shouts of joy. All the ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. Sing praise to the Lord with harp and melodious song, with trumpets and the sound of horn, acclaim the King, the Lord. All the ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. All the ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. All the ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. Oh, sing to the Lord a new song, for he has done marvelous deeds. His right hand and his holy arm have won the victory. All the ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. The ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. Let all the earth acclaim the Lord, break into shouts of joy. All the ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. Sing praise to the Lord with harp and melodious song, with trumpets and the sound of horn, acclaim the King, the Lord. All the ends of the earth have seen the saving power of God. sin. Be merciful, O Lord, for we have sinned. Be merciful, O Lord, for we have sinned. For truly I know my offences, Lord, and my iniquity always in my mind. Against you alone have I sinned, and done this evil in your sight. Be merciful, O Lord, for we have sinned. Be merciful, O Lord, for we have sinned. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew a steadfast spirit within me, Lord. Cast me not away from your presence, or take your spirit from me, Lord. Be merciful, O Lord, for we have sinned. Be merciful, O Lord, for we have sinned. The joy of your salvation restore to me. Sustain a willing spirit within me, Lord. O God, you will open my lips. My mouth will declare your praise. shall tread upon the aspen viper, and trample down lions and snakes. Be with me, Lord, when I am in trouble. Since He clings to me, He will be delivered. Since my name is acknowledged, He is raised. He shall call to me, and I will answer, and be with Him in distress. Be with me, Lord, when I am in trouble. God mounts His throne to shouts of joy, to shouts of joy. God mounts His throne to shouts of joy, to shouts of joy. All you peoples, clap your hands, shout to God with cries of joy. Awesome is the Lord Most High, great King of all the earth. God mounts His throne to shouts of joy, to shouts of joy. God mounts His throne to shouts of joy, the Lord to sound of trumpet blast. Sing praise to God, sing praise to God, sing praises to our King. God mounts His throne to shouts of joy, to shouts of joy. God is King of all the earth. Sing to Him a psalm of praise. God reigns over every land. He sits upon His throne. God mounts His throne to shouts of joy, to shouts of joy. I will praise your name forever. hearts all who are falling, and he raises up the lowly. I will praise your name forever, my King and my God, my King and my God. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. Come, let us sing to the Lord with joy. Let us acclaim the rock of salvation. Let us come into his presence with thanks. Let us joyfully sing psalms to him. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. Come, let us bow down and worship him. Let us kneel down before him who made us. For we are his people, and he is our God, and he shepherds the flock that he guides. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. Oh, that today you would hear his voice. So do not let Shout with joy to the Lord, all the earth. Sing the glory of his name. Proclaim, proclaim his glorious praise. Say to God, how awesome are your deeds. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. Alleluia, alleluia. Come and see all the works of the Lord, who is awesome in his deeds. Sing praise, proclaim his name. Let the earth bow down to worship you. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. Alleluia, alleluia. For the Lord turned the sea into land, through the waters they passed. Rejoice, rejoice, rejoice in God, for he rules forever by his might. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. Alleluia, alleluia. Come and hear, all you people of God. I will tell what he has done. Oh, bless the Lord, oh, bless the Lord, who has not withheld his love from me. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. Alleluia, alleluia. Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth. Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh Lord my God, how great you are, how many are your works, O Lord, your creatures fill the
turn that on. Is that all right? Yep. And I hope you found something in the little handout that was helpful for you. I have an Irish heritage on both sides of the family, so I think I can be excused for telling you the story. It's an Irishman who tells the story himself of taking his son to the pub for his first drink. And he said, it was a grand day, and I took my son down to give him his first drink. And the pub's only a couple of blocks away from the house. And I thought he'd like a Guinness. This is our national drink. He'd like it, so he poured two Guinness. But he said he didn't like it. He couldn't take the taste. So I thought perhaps he likes the Kilkenny. So he poured 2 glasses of the Kilkenny. And he didn't like that either, so he had to drink those as well. And gosh, perhaps it might be the lighter beer. He doesn't know the different types, so he pours this lighter lager beer. No, he said, no, so he had to drink that too. I've got it, he said. It's not the ale at all, it's the spirits he enjoys. He'll enjoy the spirit, so he orders a Jameson, and they have 2 tots of Jameson, the whiskey, and no, he couldn't take it. So he had that too. And he tried another brand, and in the end he said, well, it's obvious, something wrong with my son. He's not a man for the drink. So he said, it's we have to go home. Go home. So he said, by that time, he said, of course I'd had quite a few drinks, and he said I was a bit unsteady. He said, I almost tipped the stroller over going home. So now Tony, I think it was, told me the title of the next little trip, Climb Every Mountain. It's not exactly climbing every mountain, but it is in a way. It is. We start off with a little quote from the prophet Isaiah, who tells us to let us go to the mountain of the Lord. So that's what this is about. It's looking at the mountains, their place in scriptures, their place in nature, and their place in our lives. And just like us to think about this little quote. We've looked at Advent and Lent and Advent earlier, and this quote opens up the season of Advent. It's come. Let us go to the mountain of the Lord. So you presume that there's some climbing to be done. You don't just appear on a mountain unless you're in a helicopter. You just got to make your way up there. And that's what I'd like us to consider for ourselves. Mountains only have themselves to blame for being climbed. Ask any mountaineer, why did you climb that mountain? And you know the answer? Because it's there. It's there. So you've got to climb it. So, no sympathies for mountains. But it is something huge. It's literally rock solid. It's immovable. It's indestructible. Unless it blows itself up. Coming up on the bus yesterday, looking forward to seeing Ruapehu, but it had a big cloud over the top of it. But it did remind me then of the mountain that Moses climbed to be with God, and the covering of the cloud was a symbol of God's presence and the intimacy with which he related to Moses. But the mountain is such a challenge, isn't it? Just irresistible to people who like adventure. The human mind The mind is also something that fiercely protects its independence, and yet it craves for more than it knows. Think of your mind. Fiercely independent, but it's still craving for more. And it instinctively feels that it's not its own maker. The question, where did I come from? Where am I going? What am I here for? Those three universal questions. So, if we look at the mountain for a bit, it can be a reference point in our search for meaning. What it means to be human. Reaching towards the heavens. The mountain has played a crucial role in linking the human and the divine. It's been a meeting place for revelation, for dialogue, and for treaty. You look in our scriptures, God is revealed on the mountaintop to Moses. He dialogues with Moses, and he makes a treaty with Moses. And it's on the mountain that this occurs, that this happens. It's a meeting between the creator and the creature, between what is known and what is unknown, between heaven and earth, between God and humankind. If God is in the heavens, then the mountaintop is the closest point between earth and the heavens. So every known culture reverences the mountain in some form or another. And our $5 note honours the mountaineer, Edmund Hillary. As you know, he was the first to climb it in 1953. A typical explorer, he put the flag on the mountaintop and had a companion with him, Sherpa Tenzing. But he knelt to beg the mountain's forgiveness for disturbing its peace. And that was a response that shows a wonderful awareness of being in relationship with all creation, and particularly acknowledging the sacredness surrounding the grandeur and the uniqueness of this special place. So you have that sense of celebration, flag waving, and a sense of reverence. All cultures place the mountain in a special place. It's honoured in religious folklore everywhere. And no more so than, as I've already mentioned, in our scriptures, in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord. So we're going to climb this mountain, the mountain of the Lord. And as we go, it'll be good to remind ourselves of the mountain experiences that that come within our faith tradition. The people in that tradition are the ones who have made the journey. And we now are our companions as we go on the way. So we want to, we want to think of Abraham and Sarah, our father in faith, our father and mother in faith. The common link between Christianity, Judaism, and Muslim, Abraham and Sarah. They found the confidence to venture into the unknown on Mount Horeb. Abraham took his only son Isaac to sacrifice him on the mountain. And he found his faith was stronger than any sacrifice could be. Moses kept company with God on Mount Sinai. And as I mentioned, was the place of revelation, of dialogue, and of treaty. Jerusalem was built on a mountain. It may not be the kind of mountain that we would call a mountain, but it's impregnable. It was in its time an impregnable fortress. So it's in a very high place. Jesus opened his mission with what we call the Sermon on the Mount. And he would often climb to the high places to speak with his people. And that Sermon on the Mount is the foundation stone for Christianity. When you go back to that sermon, you find, blessed are the poor in spirit, the merciful, those who mourn, those who hunger and thirst for justice. The Transfiguration was on the Mount Tabor. And Jesus trying to prepare his disciples, the three, Peter, James, and John, for what was to come. And on the mountain, who's he with? With Moses and Elijah, the two great prophets of the tradition. Calvary was the mountain where he died. And in the Ascension, the tradition has it that he left from a high place, from the mountain, ascending. So when you look at those together, you'll see how crucial the mountain is for us, for all believers. The mountain was also, for Jesus, a place of refuge. Often after his day, the Gospels tell us that the people wanted to make him king, so he withdrew by himself to the mountains and would spend the nights in prayer there. So, as a refuge, it was also a place of danger. He went to his hometown, and he made them angry, and they took him to the cliff on which their town was built, intending to throw him over. But he walked through their midst. It wasn't his time. A place of fear. Where was that? What was the Mount of Olives? the agony in the garden on the Mount of Olives. It's a place of death, as we said, on Calvary. And it was a place of life. Because they carried him from the cross to the nearby grave, still in that same hilly area. And the grave couldn't hold him, of course, and that's what we're about to experience in the coming week as we recall that wonder. Martin Luther King, of course, had the vision of the mountaintop, and it's worth recalling. His image brings into clear focus both the challenge and the invitation that is offered to all God's people. All those who see the mountain as a place where we find our true selves. It's particularly what I want you to reflect on, finding your true self on the mountain as you climb and as you anticipate the summit. His speech on the 3rd of April in 1968, just anniversary, 3rd of April, not too far from today. He said, "I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter to me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to have a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. And I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." And he was assassinated the next day, the 4th of April, 1963. 1968. Yes. 63, of course, was the other assassination. But that's that testimony. If we can get inside of that and make it our own, I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen over the mountain. I have nothing to fear. We live in a very mountainous country. Obviously, we know that. And our largest city, Auckland, is built on more than 50 dormant volcanoes. And some of our most spectacular scenery is in the mountainous areas. Visitors come just to see it. Perhaps we take it for granted, but it's mostly visitors who notice the grandeur. We often miss what's right in front of us. And it can be the same with other kinds of mountains in our lives. We can be blind to the obstacles that block our progress in relating with others. It can stop our progress in virtue, in good living. They can be part of your life as long as you just accept them or don't consider them as obstacles or don't see them for what they really are. I'm going to ask you to think about some of the mountains that might be in your life that you have yet to climb. You might be halfway up. You might have even reached the top and have seen what they offered you, what you've become because of your energy and perseverance, patience and faith. There are mountains that can bring you to God. There are mountains that can block your journey. And there are mountains that you can get lost in. There are mountains that seem too high or too tough for you to even attempt to climb. But it's an important part of what I'd like to consider now, and it becomes very personal to you. Don't want you to think about anybody else as mountains, just your own. So, what kind of mountains are you grappling with at the moment? Just have a little think about that. What are the mountains in your life right now? There may not be any. I'm not saying you have to have mountains in your life, but it could be one or two little hills. Be different for everybody. But think of the mountains that you've already climbed. One of my sisters had a child when she was just 16, and the child was given for adoption, and it became a mountain for the family. And my mother at that time was already a widow, so it was a struggle for her, because it would have been it was her first grandchild, but she didn't have it. It was in the days when you didn't keep the child if you weren't married, or it was very hard to do so. And that mountain stayed with us for a long time. My sister was later married, and she had 4 children, beautiful children, lovely family. And the child that was adopted was kind of forgotten. Nobody ever thought of it. But there was still a mountain there that we didn't appreciate. And on my mother's 80th birthday, the little girl who had been adopted was now an adult, and she found her mother, my sister, and my sister was able to welcome her, and said to Mum, "Can I bring Catherine to the birthday so she can meet everyone else?" And Mum said, "Of course." And after that meeting, with everyone. My mother said, and I still get a bit emotional thinking about this, but I'm sharing it with you because it's just so much that gave me this little talk. My mother said to all of us, "I've just climbed a mountain." And it was, I should tell you the wonderful ending of that story is my sister's husband died and after an accident. And so it was a sadness for her and for all of us. And by that time, one of my sister's children had married and said to Mum, and they had their first child, and said to my sister, come and stay with us and look after our baby for us, be a nanny in the house. So my sister did. And she happened to be in the same city as the child who'd been adopted. And they got to know each other very much better. And one day, Catherine, the adopted one, said to my sister, "I'd love to meet my father. Do you know where he is?" And my sister said, "I haven't seen him since I became pregnant. And the daughter is now 40. So she said, "But I do know, I know where his family was, and let's try and meet him." So they did meet him. They met up, and now my sister and he are married. And then Catherine herself married, and by this time she was about 40, 48, hadn't been married before. She still had her adopted parents, but for the wedding, the adopted parents and her real parents escorted her in. And it was amazing. So mountains can be climbed, but it's not easy for lots of people. And it sometimes takes the effort of a lot of people. And you have to be open to and not afraid to ask for help. Can't climb a mountain on your own. Not even Edmund Hillary could do that. So, looking at your own mountains and having the courage to do so, give thanks for those that you've made it to the top with, or that you're nearly there. Give thanks. Be thankful. And now ask yourself, when and where have you met God? Where and when have you met God? My mother was a great person of faith, a very deep faith. So much so that when she was dying, she was convinced that she was dying now. She was in a rest home, and I was there with her, and we were going to have Mass at the end of her bed, and I'd set up things, and two of my sisters were there, and I was saying to them, "Now, if you do a reading for us, and if you do," and Mum's lying there, and she said, "Will you get on with it?" So I'm ready to go. Get on with it. So yes, Mum. So we had the Mass, had this little Mass, and we had communion, and then at the end had the blessing. And I said, "Is that okay, Mum?" And she said, "It didn't work." It didn't work. I'm still here. I said, "Oh dear, dear." Oh, so tremendous faith, and that enabled her to carry a lot of mountains, get to the top of a lot of mountains. Our dad, Mum's husband, our house was burnt down, and Dad died in the house. And that's when I was I was just in the seminary, and we were all away that day. but Dad had stayed home. It was on Boxing Day, and we'd been out. He didn't come with us. So I had a personal question then. Do I stay in the seminary, or do I look after Mum? I was the only son. And she said to me again, a bit like a deathbed. She was kind of in charge of everything, and her answer to me, because we talked about this, and she answered to me, well, she says, God needs you more than I do. And I've been very grateful for that. So it was that's what faith can do for a person, and I think I'm only what I am today because of the faith that sort of strengthened me over time. And my sister's pregnancy that I told you about, that happened after Dad died, because no one knew in those days how to handle grief. And years later, that sister told me that she about her struggle, and she said, the two men in my life abandoned me. My father died, and you went off. You're in the seminary. And I had no concept of that hurt to her, no understanding. But they've all contributed to help me be what I am today. I can listen to people, I can understand something of their struggles because of what people have shared with me about our own. So when and where have you met God? And where and when has God spoken to you, or you to God? Now, you don't have to have a physical mountain to meet God, but your mountain could be in this church. It could be at the side of your bed or at the kitchen table. Your mountain can be, God can meet you and does meet you anywhere. But see that meeting place as a mountain, because it will give you strength. It will give you peace, a sense of having conquered something. To meet God is a victory. To speak to God is a victory, and it doesn't have to be any physical mountain. Some years ago, a huge international controversy was sparked by the action, or rather an inaction, of a mountaineer. You probably remember, on his way down from climbing Mount Everest, he walked past a fellow climber in difficulties. He left him to die. And many reasons were given, and no one can really judge the situation. We weren't there, we didn't know what the conditions were like. Nothing. So who's to tell when it's time to walk on or when it's time to stop? When is it the right time for anything? Coming back to Martin Luther King, he offers this challenge in one of his addresses. Every man, that's the word he used, but every person must decide whether they will walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of destructive selfishness. This is the judgment. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? So everyone must decide whether they'll walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of destructive selfishness. And the most urgent question and persistent question that life is asking you, what are you doing for others? We have 1 week to go before the end of Lent, but don't just do it in Lent. Keep asking yourself that question. What am I doing for others? What might I be able to do for someone between now and Easter? And then what might I be able to do between Easter and Advent? Just keep asking. That question never goes away. Well, just drawing to a conclusion, I just want to not change tack, but come more into ourselves. Each of us is already standing on the top of a very high mountain, and that's ourselves. And we're like icebergs, because it's only the surface of our lives that other people can see. They can't see into the depth of ourselves. And we only live on the surface of our lives. It's just a very tiny part. It's like not just an iceberg, but even the surface that we're standing on now is just a very tiny part of what's underneath. So what's beneath you is known only to you. And sometimes we don't even know ourselves what's within. I find it hard to identify it, or control it, or help it. But it's what Jesus calls as the treasure hidden in the field, the pearl of great price. It's what's within us. You may have heard of Timothy Radcliffe. He's a Dominican priest in England, and he's a writer and a retreat giver and just a wonderful man. But he last year he had some serious surgery and wrote about it afterwards. And he said that he was summing up his experience in hospital. He said, I was anchored by tubes and constantly monitored, powerless to help myself. And then he adds, I couldn't even wipe my bottom. But he was given marvelous care. And he used this phrase, which I find really remarkable and fascinating and very helpful. He said the quality of the care that he was given through the gentleness and respect of the nursing staff. He said it was especially the look that they gave him that told him he mattered and that they were there for him. And he then he said, we exist through the gaze others give us. Now, we could have a whole nother session on that phrase. Just take it for yourselves. We exist through the gaze others give us. Now that gaze, our gaze, and it works. It works with the masks on. We've only got our eyes. So the gaze that you give one another says an enormous amount. But for him, he said, we exist through the gaze others give us. And I've heard the expression, it was as if I wasn't there. They just looked through me. or looked past me. It was as if I wasn't there. It didn't matter at all. As if I wasn't there, non-existent. So where does our gaze come from? It comes from within. It comes from that part of us that has climbed the mountain, that understands what caring means. It has an understanding and a sense of partnership that we belong to one another, we need one another. To give other people a sense of belonging, a sense of worthwhileness through the way we look at them. And then you can extend the look, the gaze, to the way we deal with them, to the way we are when we are with them. The session tomorrow is going to be centered on the concept of space. And there'll be a little bit more of that tomorrow. But just holding this one now, to think of, I exist through the gaze that others give me. And I've met such a welcoming gaze here. The ladies I met earlier, there was Colleen and Alison and Tabitha, and there was someone else. Yeah, sorry, can't quite get the name, but Leslie, thank you. Yeah, you gave me such a welcome when you introduced yourselves, and I did feel that I wasn't taking up space, that it was important. Even the Monsignor welcomed me quite well. Oh, sorry. Yes, we exist through the gaze that others give us. So just hold that as we draw close to an end, because we've done that. I didn't realize that I had that there for us, where we tried that in the mountain. Just wanted to mention the visitation of Mary to Elizabeth. She went, where did she go? She went through the hill country, so there's another sense of mountain. So the hill country of Judea, and she went to find herself. She went to find herself. She was pregnant. Joseph was having trouble accepting this. She went to be with an older relative who was also pregnant. And I'm pretty sure that they would have talked with each other about how to handle this. What's it all about? I mentioned my sister. Other people pregnant, not married. How do you work that out? So she's climbing a mountain. And she stayed there 3 months. So it was a growing, needing time for Mary. She came back a different person. My soul magnifies the Lord. I've climbed this mountain. I'm no longer afraid. I can do this. And she found Joseph in a similar situation. He'd climbed his mountain in a dream. Don't be afraid to take Mary. So you can go to Mary with your mountains too. And we heard in the Stations of the Cross last night, she climbed the mountain with Jesus. She climbed to Calvary. She was there. So these are what I was asking you. Sorry, I didn't realize I had them up there. What kind of mountains am I grappling with? What mountains have I already climbed? When and where have I met God? When and where has God spoken to me? Or me to God? So you've thought about those questions as we've been going through the handout that I have for you is not of, it doesn't include those questions. I think we could, you can put them up again if you want them, but I just wanted to, you're telling me it's time to finish?
No, I'm just going to hand out your handout.
Oh,
Is it the mountain one?
thank you. Yeah. This is just an image of mountain that you're getting, and you can make of it what you wish, and it might complement what you've already been thinking about. So there should be enough for one each, so you don't need to share them. I think the mountain that we have at the moment, that's, as I mentioned in the first session today, is that, thank you, is that sense of being overwhelmed by what's happening in our world, that we can't personally get rid of. We can't put it aside. It's right there, and it can be quite frightening. We don't know where this is going, whether the war or the climate or the virus. And I was going to again last night. We heard in the Stations of the Cross the image, the continuing image of of Mary's company with Jesus and on that journey, and praying for the Ukraine and Russia. And in Pope Francis' message on that, when he consecrated Ukraine and Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, he was praying to Mary, and he brought in the Cana, the Cana miracle, the wine, the water to wine, and Mary's statement to Jesus was not a request; it was just a remark. They have no wine, and instinctively she knew she didn't have to say any more. She's just telling him. So the Pope is saying, we want to repeat those words to Mary. In our own day, we have run out of the wine of hope. Joy has fled, fraternity, brotherhood, sisterhood has faded. Those three elements bring us back to this sense of being overwhelmed. We've run out of the wine of hope. Joy has fled, fraternity has faded. So we're just letting Jesus know through Mary that we need help. And he will certainly not abandon us. But keep in mind that your truest self is your deepest self, not necessarily the one on the surface. Your truest self is your deepest self. And hope and joy and a sense of community are found there. That's where they lie. Hope, joy, and sense of brotherhood, sisterhood, community are mixed into your deepest self. And the hardest, steepest climb, or the hardest, steepest climb of all, is the one you take to bring that deepest, truest part of you to the surface of your life. So it's a constant part of the journey to replenish the wine of hope, to bring back joy from running away, and to build up a sense of community. And I see it's very possible here because it's such a beautiful complex, a beautiful place, and I've been felt quite privileged to be able to share this time with you. If you return tomorrow, we'll look more closely at the concept of space. Now, I mentioned this little grace book. It would be appropriate to say one for our lunch. So, pardon?
Will it cost us?
Yes. I have some out on the table there, and if anyone would like one, you're supporting the Home of Compassion sisters, and they're $20 each. And there are two other little books. We haven't got many of those left, and they have been in the parish before, little prayer books, but they're also $20. So there's not many of them. If anyone wanted one and you miss out here, I can always send them up here. But there are how many here? 25 or 30 people? 30? 20? Well, I've opened it at number 37. And it begins with a little quote from Suzanne Aubert, who, as you will know, is the foundress of the Sisters of Compassion. And she writes, "Help one another and make use of the many little occasions to lighten a little, when possible, the burden of others." That was a random choice, but it's quite good for what we've been talking about. Help one another and make use of the many little occasions to lighten a little, when possible, the burden of others. And the grace prayer, gathered for this meal, we pledge to live as instruments of peace, respecting all life, easing burdens, preventing fear. Amen.
Father James, thank you so much. Father James mentioned the English Dominican priest, Father Radcliffe, Timothy Radcliffe. He had been our first choice for this weekend, but he's still recovering from his surgery, so we're so pleased that you could be here. And you'll be here tomorrow too. Lunch is ready for people.